But welcome, everybody. My name is Al Getler. It's good to have you here. Many of you will be watching this on the replay, but I do want to let you know we are shooting this live earlier in the morning. One of our guests is suffering, having to be on vacation over in France, so we got up early just for him. And I think one of his co-authors will probably razz him a little bit for that. But if you haven't joined me before, my name is Al Getler. I feature a lot of business guests. We talk a lot about leadership and customer service and things like that. Today is no different. We've got some great guests today talking about their new book, Hardwiring Magic. And if you didn't pick up on the typeset and the background, yes, we're talking about that kind of magic, the Disney magic. I am a huge Disney fan, and it's not just being a fan of Mickey Mouse or the characters. I'm a huge fan of the way Disney operates. I'm a huge fan of the way, as an organization, it really, flows together. Masterclass, I subscribed to that and devoured the Bob Iger video on that, the masterclass. Just incredible stuff. Great about strategy, all kinds of things. However, for things to happen and to be magical, there's a lot that goes into it. And one of my guests coming up here has a great term he uses for hard work versus the magic. So without any further ado, I'm going to have the first of our panelists join us. His name is Lee Cockrell, and he's joining us from Orlando. Good morning, Lee.
Hey, Al. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
Good. So glad to have you here. And we're here on a completely different topic and a co-authorship. Lee, if you could, in just, 30 seconds, give us your background. I think people know who you are, but tell them who you are one more time.
Yeah, well, I was in the hotel entertainment business for 42 years. I worked for Hilton for 8 years, Marriott for 17, and Disney for 16. And I retired as the executive vice president of Walt Disney World operations. So that's my story.
Yeah, you ran an amazing place, the happiest place on earth. Lee, you have a saying about magic, about the Disney magic. Tell me what that is, because I just love it. And I want to make sure we get it right.
Well, I said a lot of people wonder how we do it. And I say, well, it's not magic that makes Disney World work. It's the way we work. And that's what kind of things we want to talk about this morning. Way we work. It doesn't happen by accident.
No, absolutely not. And I just absolutely love that. It's true. Well, talking about hard work, let's bring on another guest who happens to share the same last name as you. He's joining us from France. I'm not going to say exactly where because I don't know, but here he is, Dan Cockrell. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, Al.
How are you?
I love your new opening. That's a great intro.
Thank you. Yeah, well, when I have amazing guests like you guys, I keep on building on it. It's fun. Dan, it's kind of like this. There was the pandemic and there was being home. So I had to learn some new talents.
That's right.
So tell us, you're in France. What's going on over there?
Yeah, well, I'm at my mother-in-law's. She is, as I reminded my kids, they got some great genes. She's 89 years old, and wow. She gardens and she knits and she drives and gets all her groceries, and she's like a fireball. And so my wife is on a visiting. She's in Africa with a friend of hers. And wow. So I'm hanging out with my mother-in-law in here in France, and we're playing we're kind of playing musical chairs. My parents are out in Colorado in our apartment in Superior while we're here. So we like to just kind of swap places.
Yeah, all over the place. Get your own Airbnb going on there. That's fantastic. Right. Good. Dan, give us your background. I met you in the Magic Kingdom, but you started, even though you had a connection, in a very humble place within Disney World.
Yeah. Went to Boston University, a political science major, and I took the next logical step, which was go start parking cars at Walt Disney World. And that was the beginning of a 26-year career, 5 years at Disneyland Paris and frontline operations opening the park, and then another 23 years in Florida working in parks, working in resort hotels. And then May 2018, took a chapter from my dad's book, and I retired and ended up my wife and I, Valor, and I started our own consulting company, and we've been doing that for 3 years now.
Outstanding. Great. And we had a little audio jump in the beginning, but you started parking cars if folks didn't catch that. So I want to make sure everybody hears that. So yeah. So another illustrious Disney career. I've seen your work in action. Like I've seen Lee's work in action, just incredible. So we're going to introduce our last, but not least guest, one of the other co-authors of the book we're going to talk about, Jorge is joining us from Miami. Good morning, Jorge.
Morning. How you doing, Al? Welcome. Again, thank you so much for inviting us.
Absolutely. Jorge, give us a little bit of your background, please.
Sure. I'm a cultural architect. I'm a mechanical and electrical engineer.
Whoops, we have
It
a little
seems
bit of a
it's
freeze.
breaking up.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a freeze on your end. Yep. All right. He froze.
I'm back.
There we go. You're back again.
Yeah.
You there, Jorge? You with us?
I'm for some time, for a little bit of time, I think the whole image got frozen. Can you hear me now?
We hear
Yes.
you now.
I don't know what happened, but anyways, I was just saying that I'm a mechanical and electrical engineer by education. I started my career in operations, supply chain, operations, logistics, process improvement, but eventually I got into how to make things happen. It depends on people. So my fascination became organizational behavior, and ever since I've been specializing on making, improving organizations, improving operations by improving the way people operate, and having the opportunity of getting trained by the Disney Institute. That's when I realized that Disney is magical, not because of princesses and castles, as Lee very well said. They are excellent at operations execution. So that's why one of the reasons why we wrote the book, which is you can design, you can architect your culture, and it's just making sure that people behave the way they're supposed to behave.
Yeah, well, it's exactly it, and I often share about people being in Disney there, creating the magic, how I was such a pessimist when I first went to Disney in the 90s with my older daughters. And I think Dan and Lee both know this. I hit a chewing gum, a little silver piece of wrapper in a plant, thinking I would come back and find it there and catch them, at their own game. And damn if that wrapper wasn't gone an hour later, and so it is about having people in the right place at the right time. And that was the last devious thing I ever did. I promise you that. But I'll tell you, it's incredible. And so the book, let me throw it back up on the screen again. The book really starts off right from the beginning with something that I think is so important, to kind of set the stage. And that is, you talk about a particular August in the introduction, when it is the worst August in 5 years in the parks. And I believe the metrics were just lowest scores, feedback from customers. All of the metrics just were not there. And one of the things I talked about when we were just getting ready to start is there are hard ways of measuring things, and there's not measuring things. You guys actually talk about the fact that you got to measure to get the results that you want. So the premise of the book starts from right there, in that you have got to be able to measure things in order to know which direction you're going in. And that seems to be a big part of the book. So I don't know who wants to take that one first, but let's talk about that for a second. Why are we talking about measurement right out of the gate in this introduction?
Well, I'll let Jorge talk a little bit, because I think this is an engineering concept. You need to have data feedback in order to make decisions. And so, Jorge, you can probably talk to that, because you're the engineer among us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really easy. You cannot track and you cannot measure, and you cannot improve what you don't measure. So you got to start, in order to improve and in order to control your operations, you need to start by measuring. But obviously, the thing is, what do you want to measure? Because when you have when you measure your temperature, you might have fever, but not necessarily know why you have fever. But it's important for you to have a stake on the ground, and out of there knowing if you're going on the right path. It's just like a pilot. If you remove the instruments from the cockpit, they're going to get lost. You're not going to get to the right destination. So it's measuring the first step to being able to navigate where you want to go.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a great analogy of the pilot. And also, I happen to be a volunteer firefighter and EMT, and the first thing we do when we get to the scene with a patient is measure the vitals. It starts with the vitals. What are the numbers? And you can't measure improvement or decline without those measurements. So absolutely, positively, what's important. In the book, you spend some time talking about a very non-Disney environment as one of the examples. And I mean that we're at Disney World to have fun. Typically, we don't go to a hospital to have fun. There's another reason why we're in a hospital. And you use this as an example of a metric measurement time and time again. And one of the things I really focused on was you talk about how often a nurse or staff visit a patient and the measurement of that. So who can speak to that for a second on that one type of measurement, just as an example?
I think it's part of the same thing. Is when we try to improve patient experience, it is clear there's a lot of information that shows that the amount of visits that a patient receives is directly correlated to the overall experience. But the thing, again, what you don't measure, you cannot track, you cannot control, you cannot improve. So we said we need to develop a metric, a way to see how often our nurses and PCTs are visiting patients. So by developing a very simple mechanisms in which we track the amount of visits, the time of the visit, because the people could come in and out, we needed to know in order to be considered a visit, it has to be at least 30 seconds inside the room. And through radio frequency technology, we were able to know whenever the nurse or the nurse assistant was in the room, how often, for how long, how much time. And we started sharing that with the team, saying, hey, look at these rooms. The visits were not consistent versus this room. The visits were really consistent. As a consequence, comparing the patient experience, the patient experience was really low with this type of low amount of visits versus this one. So again, when people saw not only that we were tracking, because obviously now that they knew that we were tracking, they started changing their behavior, but they also saw the benefit of their effort by having more frequent visits to the room. They knew that the patient was going to be happier.
And I'll tag on to that. This is chalked with so many great concepts. I think one thing you said, Al, is, you can measure anything. And today with sensors and technology, there is so much data, but data doesn't help you. You have to turn it into information. So you need to decide which metrics are the ones that are the important ones to measure, because you can measure things and have great and focus on them, but you can move the needle on those and make no difference in the customer or the guest or the patient experience. So we call those key drivers at Disney. What are the key drivers of the overall experience? So for example, food and beverage, quick service food is way down on the list. It's probably, 18th or 19th or even lower on the how it correlates to the overall experience. Now, that doesn't mean it's not important to have hot food hot and cold food cold, but you only have to do it so good because people know it's quick service and speed is the key to that. So the quality of that is you're going to hit a limit where you're not going to offer gourmet food for that because you need to use your resources the right way. A good example is two things at Disney that are huge leading indicators of overall great experience are the number of attractions that you get to ride, the number of shows you get to see, the characters you meet and see. And so that's sort of the equivalent at Disney of the amount of visits a nurse or doctor comes into a room is the amount of attractions you get to see. So that's planned every day. What's the attendance? How many rides do we have available? And how are we going to make sure that we get the 7.7 rides per guest or 8 rides per guest or whatever that target is? And so you start to look at the perceived value of guest and link it back to what you have to deliver on. And you have to prioritize because you can't do everything at 100%. You have to sacrifice some areas and really key up in other areas. And so in a hospital, they found that it's a number of times you see someone caring for you, your perception of the care goes up and then your overall experience goes up. And in turn, intent to recommend And in this case, intent to return isn't necessarily a goal at a hospital, but that's the word of mouth recommendation that you end up getting, which is really the value at the end of the day. Overall, excellent experience is important, but that has to lead to future business, and that has to lead to a great reputation. And that's sort of how it connects.
I think
Yeah, that's a great.
about, Al, is today with all the health problems in the medical business, and Jorge can speak to this, that the hospitals get punished if they don't get good ratings. They actually get monetary penalties, and if the patient comes back within 30 days, Medicare does not reimburse them for that.
Wow.
I mean, so it's getting stricter and stricter about they've got to. It's the patient rating of the service, and also hospitals want to have a good rating because they have surgeries that are very profitable too. They want people recommending you go there for your bypass surgery, or go there for your kidney transplant, or go there for. So intent to return and high ratings and recommendations from other people really is a big deal. That's where I think we trust the most when a friend tells us to go somewhere versus a rating on the internet. And so that's how Disney gets their business.
There's no doubt about that, Lee. I mean, and then, you know, when you make the correlation between Disney and this hospital experience, I mean, word of mouth is everything, right? You know, someone comes back from a Disney experience, they want to tell you everything. Typically, someone comes back from a hospital, people want to tell you about how bad the food was, how I sat there and rang a bell for 20 minutes and no one came to see me. So those basic things are fixed, and it's a great measurement, which is what I loved about the book. So I think, though, I want to take a step back now that we've explained the core of this book. For a leader, you have to have a vision, you have to have a mission, and you have to have a common purpose. Meaning, it's great that you have those things in place, but if one person in that lineup is not rowing the boat, if you will, in the same direction, if the floors aren't mopped in your hospital, if you're not greeting a customer when they walk into your retail location, if it takes too long to get your food in either a sit down or a takeout environment, you have to establish these certain metrics, but you have to start it with vision and mission and common purpose. So who can speak to that from a leadership perspective about setting those types of very high, lofty, the vision is as lofty as it gets, right? Let's talk about that for a second for the job of the leader.
Go ahead.
I think Lee can talk to the common purpose piece, because that's something, why do you come to work every day? And whether you're in a hospital, whether you're in a theme park, it has to be more than the pay. And how do you contribute personally?
Well, I think, we always talk to Disney is that we all have different roles there. There's hundreds of different kinds of jobs, from engineers to dishwashers to housekeepers to executives. And so we all have different jobs, but we have one common purpose. And no matter what role you fill, our common purpose is to make sure that every guest who comes to Walt Disney World really has the most fabulous time of their life. And we do pretty well with that because the guests tell us we do. One day, somebody said, "What is magic?" And I said, "It's when you can't understand how they do that." How they do that trick. And one thing I might say about hospitals too is, remember, everybody in those hospitals have been to Disney, so you got a lot of competition in customer service.
And I think one important thing about having a good mission, it helps you as a motivator. And I think chapter 8 of the book talks about it, because there's a big difference between, as an employee, being satisfied versus being motivated. And satisfaction has to do with the salary, the work conditions. That doesn't necessarily motivate you. Motivates you, it's three main things: sense of belonging, feeling that you're part of something. There's people that pay to belong to a club. The second one is sense of relevance. That's where the mission and vision comes, there's a higher purpose of me being here. As Dan was saying, it is not about just the money. And sense of achievement. When you combine these three elements, you get this motivation.
Yeah. And I think too, when you look at the Disney experience for the consumer, they're not really thinking about what is going on with people they can't see. I think anybody that studies Disney a little bit knows about the behind the scenes, the tunnel system, all of that. How do you keep those people who are not getting the quote unquote Disney accolades directly with the customers motivated and recognized? And how do you keep the people in a hospital environment or any other, I think about my mechanic, right? He's got a great showroom out front. He's got a fantastic person that works the front desk, but all the works are in the back, the mechanics are in the back. You can't see them, but when you get in your car, it's going to work the way it's supposed to work. So how do you keep the people who are making things work the way it's supposed to work motivated and understanding the mission and, making them feel recognized?
I think it comes back to what Lee said is you need to talk about it every single day. You need to connect every employee in the organization and explain and make sure they know clearly why their role is important to deliver on the mission of the organization. So if that's an engineering person, you have to tell them, look, families come here. We are world famous for safety. And when you're here at 3:00 in the morning, checking all the bolts and checking everything on Big Thunder Mountain, you have their life in your hands. And that's up to you to make sure that you're going to, deliver that. If the quality of work you do is going to guarantee that people have been saving for 5 years are going to get to ride the ride or meet the character that they have been talking about meeting for years, and your ability to do that. The accounting team, by clearly measuring how we're spending our money, you're going to help us decide where we can prioritize and spend dollars to deliver this magical experience. And that storytelling is important, and it has to happen all the time. It has to be that story. People need to hear every single day about why what they're doing matters. And it's easy to take for granted. It's easy to forget about that. It just becomes an office in any place. And leaders who get it constantly connect the dots so people know how they're contributing.
And by the way, if you can't explain to every employee why they matter, you probably don't need them. I mean, literally. Think why they have to understand why they matter, where they fit in, and what the ramifications are of them not doing what they're supposed to do. We talked about the engineer that services the air conditioner properly in December. He's not going to be there when that wedding happens in August and the air conditioner works, but he is the one way back down the line. And we tell these stories a lot at Disney because people need to know where they fit in, why they're important. And people want to be important. People want to matter. And every business needs to start understanding that instead of ignoring certain positions.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And Al, one of the things I learned at Disney is that it's not the teaching, but the preaching that makes a difference. It's the repeat until people really engrave it in their organizations, hence the hardwiring magic title of the book. And it's those reinforcement mechanisms that you give the leaders in order for them to keep doing this preaching and this teaching over and over again. So it doesn't matter if it's a full-time employee or a temp employee, they're going to behave the way they're supposed to behave.
Yeah, I think Patrick Lencioni calls it the cheap.
We're like mothers. We just keep at it every day, over and over. Your mother never quits helping you get better. And I think my wife feels like she picked up that role from my mother. So that's absolutely true. Patrick Lencioni calls the CEO the CRO, which I think is kind of interesting. The chief repetition or the chief repeating officer, meaning you are repeating the message again and again and again. And I often say to new leaders, just about when you get sick of hearing yourself say it is just about when people are starting to hear it. So don't stop talking about the mission. Did your mother ever say, Al, how many times do I have to tell you? How many times do I have to tell you, Al? Repetition.
Yeah, I think I've heard that outside this office once or twice too this week too. So I still don't load the dishwasher correctly apparently, but that's okay. There you go. So we talk about recognition, and one of the things that I find in an environment you do all this measurement, you get the metrics, but I think a large gap in a lot of organizations, because it's not comfortable, is providing feedback, providing the individual feedback. There are so many people in my experience in management that don't like to sit down and provide individuals feedback because it's not comfortable. Can you guys talk to us a bit about, let's start with you. I mean, you had this vast responsibility at Disney World. You had a ton of metrics in front of you. You also were known for getting out there and walking around a lot. And I think some of your feedback came instantaneously. Some of your feedback came in very, formal environments. But we'll start with Lee. Talk a bit about feedback.
I think it's very simple. The things that work the best are usually the hard things. And we have a problem with people in the world that do not want to have hard conversations and make hard decisions. So I tell people, if you cannot have hard conversations and make hard decisions, number one, don't have children, because that's right where it starts. And then don't become a leader, because at the end of the day, your responsibility is to make those people better, to make them successful. And that takes pointing out to people that, hey, I love you, but you got to do this better. And every time I'm going to teach you and I'm going to train you and I care about you, but you're going to have to listen to me and we can talk about it. But I think the thing in the world that's missing is too many people don't want to have the hard conversations. It's kind of like exercise, because it's hard. People don't exercise because it's hard. One guy told me I started lifting weights. I was going to get in shape, and I quit because those things are heavy. So and it's heavy to have to sit down and talk to people. It's very emotional, and the best leaders don't ever. We say be fair and firm. Don't worry about being liked. If you get liked, that's a cherry on top. But be fair and firm. That's what you need to do. And when you think about that and use empathy and discipline, those are the two things leaders use, back and forth: empathy, discipline, and fair and firm. And those are just pretty simple concepts, but you gotta, as Jorge said, you've got to actually implement them. You can't just talk about them.
Right. So Dan, picking up on that from your experience, as well as, why is it hard for the average frontline supervisor just to provide that feedback?
Yeah, there's a couple things I used to always ask my team. I'd say, what are the most important things you need to do before you give feedback to somebody, to one of your employees? And, everyone has a different idea. Well, you're going to tell them something positive and then sandwich in something, the critique, and close it up with something positive so it doesn't feel as bad. And the reality is, I said, look, there's two things, and it's very similar to what Lee said. A, you need to have a relationship with them so that they know that when you're giving them feedback, you're actually trying to make them better. You're not doing it because you're just trying to be, make them feel bad or you don't like them. You're actually trying to improve their performance. And secondly, you need to set a clear expectation. Do they know they were supposed to do what you told them to do? And I found myself sometimes in a situation frustrated because I hadn't told somebody clearly what the expectation was. And it wasn't fair for me to come and coach them if had never explained that to them. And, Lee talking about, raising children, I can remember very clearly when our kids were growing up. Our youngest son, Tristan, he was probably, maybe 6 or 7. And he and his friend, Hamilton, were over at our son's soccer game, who was about 6 years older, and they were over playing in the pole vault pit with the big mat, doing flips and everything. And the Star Spangled Banner came on, national anthem came on before the game, and everyone stood up and put their hand on their heart and faced the flag. And Tristan and Hamilton just kept playing. They didn't stop, they didn't do anything. So Valor and I saw this. And I thought to myself, okay, how are we handling this? And I said, well, you know what? I don't know if he knows he's supposed to stop and face the flag and do it. So we went down, talked to him, and we had a very serious conversation about that. And a few weeks later, same thing happened. And we looked over, and there he was standing on top of the mat looking at the flag. And it's like, you know what? He didn't know. And now he does. And if he had not done the second time, we would have had another conversation that would have been more stern. But these are correcting things because we want him eventually knows that's the right thing to do and improve his performance. And so I just think people forget the reason for doing that. And they just somehow there's this thing where I don't want to make people feel bad. Well, as a leader, you're not, they may feel bad, but if you're not giving the feedback, you're doing a disservice to them. Because if you don't teach them, they're going to keep doing what they've been doing forever. And in 10 years from now, they're going to have the same behavior because no one had the courage to correct it, and it's going to impact their career. So this is not only the right thing to do, it's your responsibility to do, and it's in the best interest of the people working for you. Because that's, as a leader, you're not doing them any help by not pointing out areas where they can make improvements.
And just to add to that very quickly, I think having a simple mechanism that makes it so tangible to say, this is what you're supposed to do. See, great job, great job. You see, you're missing this one. And when it's black and white, they're like, oh yeah, you're right, I forgot to do this. And next time when you come 3 or 4 weeks later and show them, hey, now you're doing it, they even get excited. So having a chapter 7 of the book talks about that simple mechanism, again, that helps you, that preaching and doing exactly what Dan and Lee mentioned.
Well, it's interesting, Jorge, you answered the question before I asked it, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you, was just that. So that's fantastic, because I think, that's where the bottom line comes down to. Okay, here, I'm not giving you emotional feedback. Here's the facts. Here's what you're supposed to be doing, and here are the numbers. So it's kind of interesting, gentlemen, as we talk about all of this during this time that we are in. In the U.S., many businesses are starting to ramp back up again, and they're faced with many different challenges, one of which is finding people to do the very work that's been laid out. And I just worked with a privately owned resort last week, and they explained to me that their capacity is being held at 60% right now. And they do that because they do know their metrics. They know how fast it is to serve food. They know what it takes to get the rooms cleaned. They have families that return year after year after year as a tradition. So when it comes to where we are presently, when it comes to measuring in this ramp up environment that we are currently in, what advice can you all give business owners as they are, I guess the way I can put it is waiting for the American worker to re-engage again?
I have a point of view on this, and I think every employer ought to be sitting back and thinking about, what are you going to give me besides a salary? What's in it for me? And not you because you want to staff your dining room and you want to make more money and more profit. What's in it for me? And if I was a business today, I'd be telling people, if you come work for me, I will make sure that we also help you understand how to be a better leader, a better manager. We will have training classes for you on Wednesday nights. We will provide opportunity for you to read and understand and meet other people. Disney now pays for college for anybody who wants to go in any subject. That's a big deal. It's not, that what's in it besides a salary. That's the name of the game. And you've got to figure out what that is. And I guarantee you, I don't care what business I would go to, I could figure out how to make those people feel special. Communicate with them, make them sure that they know that I'm investing in them so that they can have a better life down the road and a better job and get promoted. And this is like, we got to be thinking about this before we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, I had a big smile on my face when you said that too. My 18-year-old just came back from Disney World for the post-graduation vacation. What's one of the first things she said to me the next morning when she was settling in and telling about her trip? Hey, Dad, did you know that Disney pays college tuition when you go to work for them? So, I mean, that nailed it for her. She's like, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know they did that.
Daniel Cockrell, Disney paid for his MBA. You know how much money that saved me?
Wow.
Paid for it.
That's pretty good. 3
years of an MBA at a great school. So.
Yep, absolutely. So I don't know, Jorge or Dan, if you have anything else you want to add to that discussion, practical advice on as businesses are starting to ramp back up again, what should they be thinking about? I wholeheartedly agree with Lee. You have to have a bigger purpose, even if it's a part-time person, doing a part-time job in a small business. What more can you offer them? What do you two have to say about that too, as the U.S. economy ramps back up?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah,
You want me?
this, we've talked about culture before, and being in a place where things work, things are consistent. I talk to employees sometimes, they can't get the right tools to get the job done. The leaders and the managers don't, they're not consistent in how they run the place. People don't, there's not a system where they put all the equipment and the supplies, and they can't find things. And when you work in an environment where things aren't organized and things don't work well, it's frustrating. And so in my mind, this isn't necessarily, it's interesting when an economic downturn happens, or something like COVID happens, or a big ramp up happens. Everything that businesses should be doing right now, they should have always been doing, because it's not like we didn't think we were ever going to have a downturn in the economy for whatever reason. And it's not like we know that we're never going to have a big growth period also. This happens in cycles time and time again. The disciplined companies put the processes in place, and they consistently execute them every single day. So whether the business is thriving or the business is struggling, they're maximizing everything they're doing, because they are taking all the pieces of that business that are really important. At one point, Joe Torre was the manager of the LA Dodgers, and they did a article about him. This is a little bit of a tangent, but his approach to managing that team was, when they were in a slump and things weren't going well, he usually took a step back and let everyone figure out how to get back on track. And then when things were going well, that's when he really pushed everybody hard and was really critical on them. That's opposite of how most companies operate. When we're successful, we usually take our foot off the pedal and coast. But that's the time when people are ready to step up and really push, because you're making investments in that. Because when things go south, people look at those companies and go, you know what, that's always been a great place to work. And now that I have a choice of 10 places I can work, I'm going to go work there. So you're really making these investments during the good times. So when you have these situations, people are going to want to work for you, and you've had the discipline to be consistent and run your organization consistently in the ups and the downs.
Hey, Al, I would add to that. I would add to that. The big problem right now is companies are really behind the 8 ball, because they laid off people. A lot of them didn't do it right. They didn't do the right things at the right time. They didn't communicate while they were laid off. They didn't, and the trust level. The number one way to reduce turnover is trust.
Yeah.
When people trust you, and I guarantee you, I don't care what company it is today, and we're seeing it. People don't trust big companies anymore, and they're going to have difficulty. A lot of people are not going back. A lot of people are not going to put up with the way it used to be. So every company ought to be rethinking, get out of the old plan and get the new plan.
And adding to Lee and Dan, it's great to think about how to attract, but we also got to think about how to retain. And asking my daughter, she's a 20-year-old studying music therapy. I asked her point blank, what would make you leave your job? And she's like, the relationship with my boss.
Sure.
It was not money, it was not learning, it was just that relationship. And unfortunately, most organizations don't spend time and money improving that leadership role. And it's funny because we can see that we have a great nurse or a great checking agent. And after 1-2 years, companies promote that agent to a leadership position with no leadership training whatsoever. So he or she was a really good and efficient employee and became a really, so supervisor. And those supervisors are the ones that have daily relationship with the frontline employees. And if you don't have that great, supervisory level positions with great leadership skills, they're not going to have a good relationship, and people are going to leave their bosses, not their companies.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the Wall Street Journal has been filled with stories the past couple of weeks about the high level of turnover that's happening right now. People that are in jobs that are leaving those jobs and going to other jobs. And it all trails back to everything the three of you have been saying. So I think that's key. The book certainly taps into a lot of ways that you can measure, you can understand not only what the customer is thinking, what the team member, the cast member, the employee is thinking. and ways to recognize them to improve that. While we're just winding down here, a name all of you probably know, Barry Jacobson, says a great way to start the day hearing this discussion on delivering excellence for your organization. Thanks, Barry. Always great to have you join, and appreciate you being here. So we're going to wrap things up, gentlemen, and I just want to give the parting words to all of you, and then we're going to tell everybody how to get the book. So Jorge, why don't we start with you and kind of your parting words on this book and what you want people to get out of it.
Definitely, it's simple. Go to Amazon.com. It's a small, short read. Has a lot of different tools, and again, it boils down to making sure people know what to do, what they expected from them, and go back and preach to them that that's what they're supposed to do and why.
Yeah, and from the perspective too, some of the measurement tools you've designed, I want to let folks know that you talk about a system in this, literally a system. If you are a small business, you can emulate some of these things with a spreadsheet, right, Jorge? I mean, you could just measure that.
That is correct. Everything can be done in Excel.
Yeah, great. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, well, this was exciting, I think, for us because Jorge and Enrique come from an engineering background, and I've come to really respect and appreciate the engineers at Disney, whether they be mechanical, whether they be civil engineers, industrial engineers, and they were able to measure and give us objective information that drove results. And the thing that I think is special about Jorge and Enrique was the fact that they also understand the human element. And when you bring those two pieces into place, you can look at your business objectively, and then you can bring in the human element and understand how to lead teams and understand how humans interact. It's you're covering everything. That's how great companies operate. They know what they're doing, and they have people who are passionate about what they do. And I think that's what we've captured in this book of how to leverage both of those angles.
Excellent, good deal. And Lee, you started it. I'm going to have you bat clean up and close it out for us.
Well, I heard something recently that said 5 years from now you'll be the exact same person you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. So get out there, see the world, get more exposure, get more experience, read more, because it's never too late to get smarter. It's never too late to get better. And you can't get so wrapped up in your business you forget how to get better. I mean, or the business will go down and so will you. So people need to get out there and figure it out.
Absolutely. And in fact, the chapter 9 is step 9 is continuous improvement, right to your point, Lee. And when you hear the description that my daughter gave of the new Star Wars world that's been created in Orlando, and I know also in Anaheim, talk about continuous improvement. I mean, my goodness, that's all that was raved about was just, you could have kept Indiana Jones there for a long time, right? Well, nope. Now the new Star Wars world is just wowing people beyond expectations, and continuous improvement is what it's all about. And I'm going to go back to the business that you use in this book heavily, which is medicine and hospitals. We are blessed where we live that we have a great hospital that's always trying new things, and it goes for any business. Read this book, apply it to your business. As we just said with Jorge, you can take any of these big mechanical, when I say mechanical, systematic ways of measuring and do it with a simple spreadsheet and be able to provide some metrics to your team. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to ask you to hang around backstage for a minute. And I want to give you guys a proper goodbye. But for now, we're going to have you depart us one at a time. And hopefully we'll have you back here down the road and talk more about it. So I'll see you guys in a minute backstage. Well, it is just always my extreme honor and pleasure to have talented people like this. My background with that group starts with Lee, who immediately embraced me in a video project I had many years ago. And he's remained a dear friend ever since. And I got to tell you, this book, it is available on Amazon. I have it on my Kindle. Go and find it. Hardwiring Magic. If you search it on Google, it pops right up to the very top of the list. So these guys have done their work. By all means, buy the book and apply the metrics. And if you have any further questions about the book, by all means, go ahead and reach out to me. All of my social media is at Al Gettler. Can't even say my own name. There's a metric for you. And I will get you the answers. So by all means, reach out to me. So with that, thank you so much for joining me here today. We'll have some more guests coming up soon. Until then, be careful, be safe, and enjoy the summer months and get some relaxation in. Talk soon.